Good morning. My name is Colleen Sibthorpe, and I'm happy to serve as the chair of the board.
I can't tell you how nice it is to see faces in person, bodies in more than one dimension. That is wonderful. Good morning. My name is Colleen Sibthorpe. I am a member of the UUC-QC Board of Trustees, and I would like to take a moment to welcome you to our service this morning. Unitarian Universalism encourages an open-ended search for meaning in life and a commitment to asking our values to shape our actions. We are a pluralistic religion that draws wisdom from many sources. We welcome all people into our beloved community of whatever age, race, class, ethnicity, physical ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religious background. We especially welcome those of you who may be worshiping with us for the first time this morning, and we invite you to join us after service downstairs for coffee and snacks so that we might get to know each other better. And I'd also like to take this moment to invite you to a little going away gathering we're having for the Hammerans this afternoon right after services. So please join us. I understand there'll be lots of good food. Guests are welcome to participate in any activities in our community. Let us take a moment now to greet someone nearby that we do not know, someone that we may all feel welcome.
Oh yeah. Like I said, my goal is to not cry. Do we have a spotlight today? Nope. Okay. Oh, we have a spotlight. Hold on a second, Steve. Sorry. Go ahead, Aubrey. I will take this opportunity to speak to you all. As you might have noticed, I sent out an email and a Facebook post about how the nursery is open today and the preschool room is open today. Yay! So for those of our youngest congregants, about 5 and under, for kids older than that, we have rooms set up downstairs. There's an art room for creation. There's a building room for building faith and activities. We need volunteers for those rooms, and we need volunteers for our wonderful youth group as well. So we really want to make sure that it's not the same volunteers every week downstairs. We want everyone to have an opportunity up here in the sanctuary to worship. So our safe congregation policy is that there needs to be 2 adults in a room at all times. So that means, 2 for 2 classrooms and then 2 for the youth group. So please let me know if you're interested in volunteering. You would be very much appreciated. Thank you. we're having technical problems, so just. What was that? Ooh. Fun. Well, could do. While you're working that out, do you want me to go ahead and do chalice lighting? Let's do chalice lighting. Okay. All right. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, sustain, and to inspire. Any luck, Steve?
This year is the hardest year of your whole life. So hard, you cannot see a future most days. The pain is bigger than anything else, takes up the whole horizon, no matter where you are. You feel unsafe, you feel unsaved. Your past, so present, you can feel your baby teeth. Sitting on the couch, you swear your feet don't reach the floor. You keep remembering the first time you saw a bird's nest held together by an old shoelace and the scraps of a plastic bag. You knew the home of a person could be built like that. A lot of things you'd rather throw away. You keep worrying you're taking up too much space. I wish you'd let yourself be the Milky Way. Remember when I told you I was gonna become a full-time poet and you paid my rent for 3 years? Best friend, angel of the get-through. All living is storm chasing. Every good heart has lost its roof. Let all the walls collapse at your feet. Scream timber when they ask you how you are. Fine is the suckiest word. It is the opposite of here. Here is the only place left on the map. Here is where you learn laughter can go extinct and come back. I'm already building a museum for every treasure you unearth in the rock bottom. Holy, vulnerable cliff, God Mason, heart heavier than all the bricks. Say this is what the pain made of you. An open, open, open road, an avalanche of feel it all. Don't let anyone ever tell you you are too much or it has been too long. Whatever guards the feet on the bridge of the song, you are made of that thing, that unbreakable note. That photograph of you at 5 years old, the year you ran away from school because you wanted to go home. You are almost there. You are the same compass you have always been. You are the same friend who never left my side. During my worst year, you caught every tantrum I threw with your bare hands, chucked it back at that blood moon, said it's okay. Everyone's survival looks a little bit like death sometimes. I wrote a poem called Say Yes while I was cursing your name for not letting me go. Best friend, this is what we do. We gather each other up. We say the cup is half yours and half mine. We say alone is the last place you will ever be. We say tonight, let's just stay inside, reading Pema Chodron while everyone else is out on the town. Pema will say only to the degree that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible in us be found. You'll say, Pema is so wise. I'll say, yeah, she is. And we are too. Angels of the get-through, we are too.
So that was Angels of the Get Through by Andrea Gibson. And now we're going to have Words for All Ages with Aubrey. So any of the kiddos who'd like to come down or young in heart, please join us in the front, and Aubrey's going to read us a story. You can stand right next to me, even, Ezra. Ooh, this works this week. All right, before we read a story, let's do a little bit of breathing. And maybe I can have Ezra help me. I'll just show you what we're going to do, okay? So let's breathe in and out like this wonderful ballish thing, what are we going to call it? So breathe in deep into your belly. Hold and out. And in and out. When you breathe in, you can think, I am. And when you breathe out, you can think worthy. Our first principle of Unitarian Universalism is that we respect the inherent worth and dignity of all beings. So I am worthy. Thank you, friends. Can I hand this to you, Ezra? Thank you. And then you can go and take a seat. All right, so Diana asked me to read this book today, and I'm so glad she did because I had never seen it. So this is called This Day in June, and I noticed that there are a lot of rainbows in this book, so I wonder if we could count them all. Yes. Ezra is a rainbow. So this is called This Day in June by Gail E. Pittman. This day in June, parade starts soon. Rainbow arches, joyful marches. We see these rainbow balloon arches. Motors soaring, or motors roaring, spirits soaring. Have our folks on motorcycles. Voices chanting, doggies panting. Clad in leather, perfect weather. They're waving their rainbow flags. Artists painting, sisters sainting. Banners swaying, children playing. Can anyone see what that banner says? Dancers jumping, music pumping. Sidewalk shaking, tummies aching. Painted ladies, crying babies. Fancy dresses, flowing tresses. Loving kisses, so delicious. All invited, all excited. This day in June, we're all united. So, thank you for that. And thank you for listening. And I have some, did you see all the rainbows in there? I didn't count them either. I have some rainbows for all of us. So if we want to go back to the table again, I've got these rainbows and the best thing ever, new markers. So can I have someone take these markers back and take them out of the package, and then I'll bring these rainbows back for us. And grown-ups, if there's enough of these, you can do it too.
Please rise in body and our spirit for our opening hymn, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. All right, now we have Isabel Dawson.
Good morning. I'm Isabel Dawson. I'm one of the newer members of this congregation. So a picture was posted on Facebook. It had two beautiful white brides in their white dresses. And one of the comments on the photo was, "Oh my God, I've always wanted to do like a double wedding with my best friend." Is there like a picture of the grooms? There were no grooms. It was, a gay wedding. But we all have these assumptions, and it was an honest mistake. We all have these internal biases and prejudices. This is one of the reasons why meaningful, thoughtful media can be so important. We have conscious, but then also unconscious or implicit biases. So just telling yourself, oh yeah, gay marriage exists, it's great, it only really is going to your conscious brain. Your implicit bias is still making some snap judgments. The Harvard Implicit Association Test has been a popular tool used by scientists to score people's hidden implicit biases, and the race test is by far the most common. You can take the test for free online whenever you want, and scientists have found that the implicit scores don't actually reflect whether you say you treat people of different races equally. These implicit biases come out in your body language or in your snap judgments without you really being aware of it. Well, what can we do about that? Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Blink, states that those implicit biases develop from the experiences we've had, the people we've met, the lessons we've learned, the books we've read, the movies we've seen, and so on. Yet, so the key to this reprogramming holds in this implicit biases and in these same things. Gladwell states of reprogramming, it requires more than a simple commitment to equality. It requires that you change your life, so you are exposed to minorities on a regular basis and become comfortable with them and familiar with the best of their culture, so that when you want to meet, hire, date, or talk with a member of such minority, you aren't betrayed by any hesitation or discomfort. This is why the media you watch is so important. The Harvard Implicit Association scores dramatically decrease in bias if you've been recently exposed to positive media of that group. For example, if you watch a documentary on Martin Luther King Jr. right before you take the race test. By watching the news overly portray violence committed by peoples of color, these can dig implicit biases even deeper. This can be true even of representation for the very group you yourself are a part of. It's one of the reasons I watch and rewatch the comedy Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It has Black characters and Latina characters, gay characters, bisexual characters, which is a little more rare. When I asked my dad why I watch the same show again and again for the billionth time, it's really that I'm comforted by seeing a happily married gay couple, by seeing lots of representation. I know a lot of other queer people my age, but not many married and with kids. This is one of the reasons that joining this UU church and Queer Conversations has been so special to me. I actually get to see in your congregation a lot of options and internalized real options I have in my future for married couples and for kids. Implicit biases prove that knowing something and seeing it, visualizing it, are very different things. I want to be clear, representation actually changes the way you think. So I challenge you today as you listen to some awesome examples of media that lifts up LGBTQIA stories, that you choose some and you make the challenge to yourself to watch them. Thank you very much and happy Pride Month.
All right, so we're gonna play this song and then I'll do a quick just explanation of why it's important to me after the song's over.
This oceanside Verbo is about to become the backdrop for an unforgettable vacation.
My lover, sweet as sugar, because she's made of it. I look to her for comfort. We melt like chocolate. Swallow dust to the answers to the questions in my mouth. I'm addicted to the pleasure she brings me from north to south, and I walk with the candy in my shoes, so I know I will not lose this sensation of the sweetness of temptation. comfort. We melt like chocolate. Swallow now, suffer later. Be the last to say goodnight. I'm addicted to the pleasure. It brings me to hold her tight, and I walk with the candy in my shoes, so I know I will not lose this sensation of the sweetness of temptation. And I talk with the candy on my tongue, so the conversation's always young, cyanide, cinnamon, I love her sweet as sugar because she's made of it. We're closet Cinderellas, each other's perfect fit. Swallow pride, chew perfection, drink it down and spit it out. I'm addicted to the danger. It brings me to spell this out.
So that was Cyanide and Cinnamon by Rachel Sage. It was produced, first came out in 2001, but I didn't hear it till about a decade later. And I'd been out for several years by that point. But it was one of the first times that I had ever heard a female voice unambiguously singing about a female lover. That was a huge just revelation to me. I mean, we have more queer artists who are open these days, but especially in 2001, that was unheard of. I mean, you had Melissa Etheridge, but she would never use pronouns. It was, very ambiguous. And so this song was one of the first ones where I ever heard just unambiguous queer love. And that was so important to me. It was one of the first songs that Rose ever played for me, actually, and I fell in love with her. So Rachel Sage is actually bisexual, and so she has several songs about queer love, but I've always appreciated about her that she never hides who she's singing to or who she's singing about. And that, I feel like, is just a huge plus to the community, just to be able to have that representation and have that just straightforward, I'm queer, I'm singing to my girlfriend, this is important. So that's my piece. I don't have a lot to say about it, but I just wanted to share that with you. So now we're going to be taking our offering. 50% will go to Clock Inc., which is a local LGBTQIA center in Rock Island. So please be as generous as you can. And after you've donated, please feel free to come up and light a candle for Joys to Sorrows. There's also the Joy and Sorrows book in the hallway. You still have a few minutes to fill it out. Thank you. Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to check. All right, thanks. Okay, all right, so Joys and Sorrows today from Chris and Danny. They bought their first home. Congratulations. And from Amy Key, a sorrow for the family of George Floyd on the sentencing of Derek Chauvin. And I have a personal one as well, a sorrow and a joy for them, for Colleen and Brian and Laurel Sibthorpe. They are moving to Michigan on Friday, I believe. So we will miss how much they have done for this congregation, especially Colleen, in leading the board and all of her hard work. So make sure if you see her after service, tell her, wish her well for me, okay? All right, and next we have special music by Abby Burnett. feel robbed of Abby's last note. That's okay. You did beautiful. It was beautiful. All right. Next up, we have Amy Key doing a reading from, well, they can introduce themselves.
I don't know that it's fair that I have to follow that. That song always gets me. I'm Amy Key. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her. For the benefit of my friends Joe and Taryn today, I specifically wore a shirt I made for Pride a couple years ago that's covered in the names of queer activists, artists, actors, authors from past and present. Whew. Today, I'll be reading from a book, this book. It's entitled The Natural Mother of the Child, a memoir of non-binary parenthood. It's a collection of essays by an author, Chris Malcolm Belk, about his experience as a trans gestational parent. And this essay takes the form of a letter to his mother. I always knew how happy it would make you to see me pregnant. When I met Anna, you told me it made you sad, how my life would always be hard now. You still thought I was your daughter then. Often other trans gestational parents I know ask how to handle it when family members won't stop calling them mom, wishing them a happy Mother's Day, even calling them their old names after years of studiously avoiding it. People see you as different after you carry a baby, they say. When you had a daughter first, I'm sure you thought ahead to this, to me sitting on stoops in the middle of our walks in my Philadelphia neighborhood to catch my breath, to folding tiny newborn-sized onesies into a drawer. The enormous globe of me full with your grandchild, so much possibility there, that I could really be the daughter I was supposed to be. I thought so too. When I sealed my ultrasound picture in an envelope and sent it to you, I felt happy for a minute. Like maybe I didn't need to transition to be happy with this body. But after he was born, Samson only made me more sure. His face a copy of mine, of my brother's. He lay there with the life ahead of him that I wanted for myself, if he wanted it. Nothing about being pregnant made me feel feminine. This body is what it is, not quite man, not quite woman, but with the parts to create and shape life, to expel and care for that life. Creating Samson, given such a strong name because I had felt that I had done something strong, made me ready to be me. The best name in the world, Anna says, though we have 2 other sons. Your best present, she says. I chose this essay because it really strikes a chord with me. I am actually my parents' only child. They thought their daughter. I first came out as a lesbian, and my mother too grieved for the life that she had imagined for me and worried that my life would always be harder. I first became a parent when finally, after years of struggling with infertility, my wife gave birth to our first child. And as his non-gestational parent, and having no legal rights to him at birth, despite the fact I'd been with my wife from the idea, the first thought of him, all the way through his birth, I had to fight hard to be recognized as his equal parent in the eyes of the law and even in the eyes of some of our family. And not having come to terms with my gender at that point, I fought hard for equal recognition as his mother. But as hard as I fought for that recognition as mother outwardly, it never felt quite right. Not because I wasn't his parent, but still something didn't feel quite right. And then when that first baby turned 1, we decided for many reasons that I would try to carry our second child. Again, after infertility struggles, and this time 2 miscarriages, I was finally pregnant. And as grateful as I was to finally have a successful pregnancy and for that child we would be welcoming, it was quite possibly the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life and the most transformative. I could no longer deny my dysphoria as my body changed, and I knew without a doubt that I was not a woman or a mother. Being pregnant and nursing a child with your body are often seen as the pinnacle of womanhood. I've done both, and I've never felt less feminine. I am not a mother or a father. I am a parent, both a gestational and a non-gestational one. And both of my children are my greatest gifts.
All right, and Rose couldn't be here today, but she's got a. There we go. You go. Nope, you're good. Yep, you're good.
The theme of important queer media. I am talking today about Alison Bechdel and her new book, The Secret to Superhuman Strength. But in order to talk about this book and about Alison Bechdel, much the way that she does, I have to tell a layered story going back many, many, many years. Many of you may know of Alison's work already. You may be familiar with Fun Home, which became a smash hit Tony Award-winning musical. You may be familiar with her from her other books, both Fun Home and Are You My Mother? Or the way you may most likely know her is actually from a comic strip that she wrote many decades ago. And it went down into popular history as the Bechdel test. This is that original comic strip, or the bottom part of it where it's got the test. And it reads, well, I don't know, I have this rule, see. I only go to a movie if it satisfies 3 basic requirements. 1, it has to have at least 2 women in it, who, 2, talk to each other about, 3, something besides a man. That's pretty strict, but a good idea, says the other person. And the first person then says, no kidding, the last movie I was able to see was Alien. Alison does not claim to actually have invented this. She says this was attributed to her friend Liz Wallace, who actually was the person who came up with this rule. But it has become an interesting piece of particularly feminist activism history, and it's also been extrapolated into many other things. Alison started as a cartoonist right out of college, practically, and she wrote the well-known in queer circles Dykes to Watch Out For comic for 25 years. And in those 25 years, she took her original core group of characters and told stories about them and their lives as they grew, as politics changed, as their families changed. And although it was entirely fictional, it was based on people she knew, friends she had, but she made them their own families. They evolved. It wasn't like Calvin and Hobbes, where it was sort of forever just before, school starts again. They grew over time. This comic strip is from Dykes to Watch Out For from 2008, and it is one of the last ones before she stopped writing it. And in this one, a character who is now, you've watched this character grow from a small child over the years, is now talking about and arguing with her parent about how she wants to join the Speakers Bureau of the queer youth group and go to schools to talk about being trans. 2008, mind you. But watching these characters grow with their real life nuances was, for me, as a person who came out late in life but was been following this for a long time, it gave me a sense of what specifically lesbian community or bi and lesbian community could look like, what their families look like, what those stories could be. So Dykes to watch out for, hugely powerful, and primarily focused around, as you may imagine, the Dykes to watch out for. Over time, Alison Bechdel started to work on more directly autobiographical and biographical work, and that eventually evolved into the book Fun Home. This panel from Fun Home, once it was adapted into a musical, became its own song. Like, it's a single panel in the entire book, and it was so iconic it became its own song in the musical called Ring of Keys, which will be played at some point during the service today. But in this one, very specifically, there's a visual of Alison as a young child seeing a person who, with short hair and a gingham shirt, wearing keys on their belt. And the text reads, "I didn't know there were women who wore men's clothes and had men's haircuts. But like a traveler in a foreign country who runs into someone from home, someone they've never spoken to but know by sight, I recognized her with a surge of joy." Again, the main theme in Fun Home is Alison herself and her coming out story as a lesbian, and also the story of her father's closeted homosexuality. Alison not only writes about fictional characters and about her own family, but she also writes about herself, writing about herself in this especially layered way. This one is a comic she actually wrote for 7 Days Vermont, which is an indie paper in Vermont. And it's about her watching for the first review of Fun Home the musical. And it says, "I missed the opening night of Fun Home, the off-Broadway musical adapted from a graphic memoir I had published 7 years earlier. Due to a scheduling conflict, I found myself in a hotel in rural Ohio, repeatedly refreshing the New York Times theater page. I had ceded any creative control over the play. When I saw previews 2 weeks earlier, I'd been stunned by how good it was. The theme of the picture in the corner. The book was written and came out, but before the musical did, Alison wrote another book more directly about her mother and her relationship with her mother, and that book is actually called Are You My Mother? And anyone who has small children has probably read the children's book that the title came from. I have the picture in the corner is a green background from that book, and it's got a very sad-looking dog with floppy ears and a little bird standing on the dog's head talking to it. And the title of that book is Are You My Mother? And it's about a little bird who goes around asking different animals, "Are you my mother?" Alison took that idea and wrote a deeply painful and moving autobiography of not only herself in her relationship with her mother, but also her mother's life and Alison's own journey through therapy, and a very intimate discussion of the ways in which mothers and daughters interrelate. So I've got 2 panels from that book. The top one is Alison on the phone with her mother, and her mother says, "You're not going to use your real name, are you? Couldn't you use one of your funny names?" And Alison says, "That would defeat the purpose." And her mother said, "I would love to see your name on a book, but not on a book of lesbian cartoons." Even here, the relationship is difficult. And although her mother didn't actively reject her, there was always this kind of subtext that what she was and her queerness should not be publicized. In the bottom is a panel that speaks much more directly to Are You My Mother as its own book. And the head caption says, "This session was in August 2009, just after I'd had my last period." Alison is laying on a couch and talking to a psychiatrist who's sitting in a chair. The therapist or psychiatrist says, "I think your mother has some resentment about being female that got passed on to you." And the lower caption says, "There is no way to know, of course, whether a particular period will be your last. You can only tell retrospectively." One of the things I find most fascinating about Are You My Mother is that the distance that you find in Fun Home between Allison and her father. There was this repeated refrain of distance and being unable to connect, is present and also not in the book Fun Home, where she talks about her mother, and in this deep exploration of the ways in which bodies are gendered and the ways in which mothers and daughters relationships are gendered was particularly fascinating. I loved the book. It was incredibly difficult to read. And interestingly enough, it did not receive anywhere near the notice or accolades that Fun Home did. And it's kind of not surprising to me. Yet again, you see cases where discussions of, people with daddy issues get a lot more play in the media than the kinds of intimate discussions of particularly mothers and daughters. But in all of this, all of her writing has had this deep focus on being a queer person, about queer people living their own lives, where queerness is not some sort of add-on. It's in right there, front and center, every single panel. So when I picked up Secret to Superhuman Strength, which I was very excited to get, I was blown away by how absent queerness is in the text. The book is enormous, and it is a full autobiography. It covers Allison's life from birth all the way up through the pandemic. The last 5 pages are discussions about the pandemic, and it covers the whole thing. It's broken up by decade, by chapter, and it talks about her as a child, covering a lot of the same territory in some ways that Fun Home and Are You My Mother did. But then it starts to talk in more depth about her young adulthood, and you get a much more intimate picture of herself as an artist, and more specifically, as the kind of almost tortured writer archetype. This is from an early part in the book where she's right out of college and she joins an all-women karate studio, and she gets all the way up through black belt. And one of the things she loves about it was the sense of being in a space where you could be strong with other people without it being something where you're necessarily fighting. And right after she gets her black belt, she actually ends up in a fist fight in the subway, and she never goes back to karate again. It's a particularly telling sort of story to talk about for her, because nowhere in any of this entire section is really her queerness made front and center. She talks through the whole book about girlfriends, about long-term partners. They're major characters in some sections, but it's all in the same vein that you would talk about anybody's biography. And in fact, she does talk about many other people's lives in the book. It's got biographical stuff about Jack Kerouac, Emerson, Coleridge, Dorothy Wordsworth. And in fact, at one point, Allison and her partner Holly actually climb a mountain that Jack Kerouac did in an effort. Allison is trying to kind of shake herself out of a creative hole. And so they try to climb a big mountain. And it's this funny kind of looking at the past for information while at the same time reflecting on how the patterns don't really change. I know the book is called The Secret of Superhuman Strength, and the kind of conceit around it is exercise and exercise gear, and particularly the way that Allison uses exercise to deal with mental health. But she also is very upfront about her own kind of low-level alcohol use and the way that she always has trouble sleeping and takes meds for that. There's a lot of her body and her existing in her body in the world that isn't present in her previous work. In her previous work, it tends to be a lot more cerebral. It's a lot of thinking, talking, therapist couches. But here, it's very present, and she's very much in the world, in every piece of it. And this book, her queerness recedes to the background, in a sense, where her embodied daily experience comes to the forefront. This is also the first book where she sort of uses much fewer women as sort of comparison figures. It's a theme in every book. There's always some extra kind of historical characters that are being layered into the narrative. And it's much less in this book, which was fascinating to me, because I kind of went in with a sense of I thought I kind of had a sense of what her writing would be. And this one was so different. But the thing that I felt most interested in this book is how you get the sense that this is her last book. You really get that feeling that this is her some autobiography. Toward the last sort of quarter of the book, there's a panel that this is actually a picture from my cell phone because I couldn't get it to scan. But her mother calls Allison to explain about her new cancer diagnosis, which had come while Allison was on tour for Fun Home. And Allison says, "I could not help feeling that now I was slaying my mother too." And she says to her mother over the phone, "How do you feel?" And her mother says, "I knew you'd ask that. I don't want to talk about it. That's not how I do things." And the caption says, "There are two ways to surpass your parents. One is to achieve the thing they had hoped to. The other one is somewhat easier, just to live longer." And in these final reflections on her own life, on her own experience, her own main autobiography, where the focus is not her father, is not her mother, or even in her Dykes to Watch Out For, where it's her fictional characters. In the one book about her own life, what Allison centers is her own lived experience as an artist, as a writer, as a person, as a being in the world who goes running because it helps their mind stop, endlessly agonizing about things. And the front and center queerness that is seen in previous works recedes into the background, but what comes through even more is how she is her own whole person in the world. And I think part of what is so amazing about this book for this in this time in history after this long career is we are at the point now where for a lot of queer people, our queerness can do that. It can recede into the background and we can be first and foremost people in the world. Our queerness doesn't have to be the first thing that we have to defend or explain or know. It doesn't have to be like that. We can be first people. And it was so interesting to see that reflected in this whole story in this book. So I strongly recommend it, and I do recommend her entire body of work. Please check it out. A lot of it is available online if you look her up. But the formative history coming into the present of queer experience is just amazingly laid out in her story.
Please rise in body and or spirit for our closing hymn, number 1014, Answering the Call of Love. Our closing words today are an excerpt from My Lover is a Woman by Pat Parker. I'm just reading the first stanza. I believe there are 5 or 6. My lover is a woman, and when I hold her, feel her warmth, I feel good, feel safe. Then I never think of my family's voices, never hear my sisters say, bulldaggers, queers, funny, come see us, but don't bring your friends. It's okay with us, but don't tell Mama, it'd break her heart. Never feel my father turn in his grave, never hear my mother cry. Lord, what kind of child is this? Please join us in extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
You didn't notice her at first, but I saw her the moment she walked in. She was a delivery woman. She came in with a handcart full of packages. She was an old school butch.
Someone just came in the door, like no one I ever saw before. I feel I don't know where you came from. I wish I did. I feel so dumb. I feel your swagger and your bearing and the just right clothes you're wearing, your short hair and your dungarees and your lace-up boots and your keys. Oh, your ring of keys. I thought it was supposed to be wrong, but you seem okay with being strong. I want to. You're so. It's probably conceited to say, but I think we're like in a certain way. Your swagger and your bearing and the just right clothes you're wearing, your short hair and your dungarees and your lace-up boots and your keys. Oh, your ring of keys. Do you feel my heart saying hi? In this whole luncheonette, why am I the only one who sees you're beautiful? No, I mean handsome. Your swagger and your bearing and just right clothes you're wearing, your short hair and your dungarees and your lace-up boots and your keys. Oh, your ring of keys. I know you. I know